News Corporation Chairman Rupert Murdoch has returned to the stand at the Leveson Inquiry, this time facing more specific questioning over what he knew of the phone hacking scandal at the News of the World. ABC correspondent Lisa Miller has been following the proceedings and joins us now from London. Lisa, yesterday was all about the relationship between Rupert Murdoch and politicians in London, and now more specifically they've been looking at the phone hacking scandal at the News of the World. In the past, Rupert Murdoch has said that the buck does stop with him. So did he explain how this scandal unfolded under his watch?
Well, it was certainly a more hostile Rupert Murdoch than we saw yesterday, Emma, and he had a lot of regrets, some apologies, but at the end of the day he was spreading a lot of blame. He was pointing the finger even at his son James for being pretty inexperienced, he said, when the issue first arose. He pointed to a couple of figures at the News of the World. He also suggested that he wished he'd gotten hold of Clive Goodman, the first royal reporter who was arrested and convicted over phone hacking, got him in a room without any of the lawyers and got to the bottom of it and then torn the place apart. But I think the headline that we'll see come out of these proceedings today, this final day and a half of Rupert Murdoch, was that he admits there was a cover-up at the paper. Let's have a listen.
I think the senior executives were all informed, and were all misinformed and shielded from anything that was going on there. And I do blame one or two people for that, who perhaps I shouldn't name, because for all I know they may be arrested yet. But there's no question in my mind that maybe even the editor, but certainly beyond that, someone took charge of a cover-up, which we were victim to, and I regret.
Extraordinary words there from Rupert Murdoch.
How does that sit with the idea of editorial independence at those sorts?
We know that Rupert Murdoch owns something like 175 news titles, including the News of the World, and 6,000 journalists. So did he give any sense of how he was distracted, where his attention was during this whole scandal?
Emma, you do get a real sense that his heart was with The Sun, the biggest selling tabloid in the UK, and that he didn't care that much about News of the World. He said he didn't pay much attention to it, and while he apologised to all the people who lost their jobs there at the newspaper, he said when he made the decision to close it that he'd panicked, and that was what had forced that decision. But then he went on to say, I should have closed it years ago. So a real sense that his heart was not in that newspaper. He didn't pay any attention to it, and where his head was at the Sun newspaper.
It beggars belief, considering what a profitable newspaper it was for the group in the UK. But Mr Murdoch was also questioned, we know, about what's now become very famous footage in the UK, played over and over on British televisions, and that is the footage of Mr Murdoch walking alongside Rebekah Brooks, his one-time News International chief executive. Now, he was surrounded by a press pack pushing him for an answer to the question of what his priority was at the time. He pointed to Rebekah Brooks and said her. The inference being she was the priority. Now, at the time and subsequent to that, everyone has thought that was an incredibly inappropriate statement to make. How did he justify it?
It was considered inappropriate, you're right, because of the number of victims and terrible stories that were coming out, the fact that he thought Rebekah Brooks was the priority. Well, it was extraordinary today to listen to him talk about the anguish, as it was, of being harassed by the paparazzi. He said, you know, if you've got the paparazzi chasing you as they were, you know, they had microphones right under my nose and cameras in my face, and it was almost people raising their eyebrows looking at this man who's made millions from the media, talking about being harassed and pushed into answering in a way perhaps he didn't want to by the paparazzi. But then, of course, he said most of them were freelancers anyway, they didn't work for me.
The table's turning there. Lisa Miller, thank you very much.